Okay, picture this. You grab your coffee, settle in, pull out your phone to catch up on the news.
Hmm.
You tap into your go-to site, that one independent source you really trust.
Right. The one you rely on for a different perspective, maybe.
Exactly. And nothing.
Yeah.
Just an error message, blank screen. Now, what if that wasn't just, a server hiccup? What if the entire site vanished from the internet in India?
It's kind of a chilling thought, isn't it?
It really is. And that unsettling scenario is precisely what we're diving into today. We're looking at the moment in 2025 when the Indian government blocked the website of The Wire.
Yeah, this isn't just some tech issue about website access. It's a really significant event. It forces us to ask some pretty tough questions about press freedom, about government power in the digital age.
Absolutely. And for anyone listening who might not be familiar, The Wire isn't just any website. They launched back in 2015, and, well, they quickly built this reputation for serious, in-depth journalism.
They really did. Known for not pulling punches, for tackling sensitive issues, holding power accountable, that kind of thing.
So when a platform like that just gets sort of digitally erased overnight, it sends shockwaves, doesn't it? Not just for their readers, but for, well, anyone who cares about journalism in India.
Precisely. So our goal today is to unpack this whole situation. What exactly went down? What were the reasons given? Or perhaps more importantly, the reasons not given?
Right. And what does it all mean for, the bigger picture, information, democracy, all of that? We want to give you, the listener, the key insights without all the overwhelming noise.
Okay, so let's talk about the blocking itself. You mentioned it was sudden.
Yeah, not like a slow degradation. It was abrupt. 1 minute, you could read their articles. The next, gone. Just that dead end online. Error pages.
And the government response, or lack thereof, initially.
That was striking, too. Just silence. No immediate press release saying, here's why. No detailed order published right away. It felt like someone just slammed a digital padlock on the site.
And that suddenness, combined with the lack of immediate, clear justification, that's really what fuels the concern, isn't it? It creates this information vacuum.
Exactly. Speculation runs wild. You're left wondering what just happened.
Which naturally brings us to the legal bedrock here, the Indian Constitution, Article 19(1).
Ah, yes, the freedom of speech and expression. Sounds so fundamental.
It is fundamental, but like many rights, it's not absolute. There's this concept of reasonable restrictions.
Okay, explain that a bit. What constitutes reasonable?
Well, the Constitution allows the government to impose restrictions on free speech in the interest of specific things like the sovereignty and integrity of India, national security, public order, decency, morality, things like that.
Okay, those sound like serious justifications. But the question then becomes,
Is blocking an entire news website, every single article, every opinion piece, every investigation, is that a reasonable restriction?
it feels disproportionate, like you wouldn't ban all pizza restaurants because one served a bad slice, right?
Yeah, that's a great analogy, actually. Proportionality is absolutely central here. Was this the least intrusive measure possible to address whatever the stated concern was, if there even was a specific concern linked to specific content?
And were less drastic options, like maybe asking for specific articles to be taken down, even considered? It doesn't seem like it from the outside.
That's the crucial question, and the lack of transparency makes it impossible to answer definitively.
And this whole thing didn't happen in a vacuum, did it?
Yeah.
We need to think about the wider context of press freedom in India around that time. The 2025 World Press Freedom Index. Where did India stand?
Not great, unfortunately. The 2025 ranking from Reporters Without Borders put India at 151st out of 180 countries.
151st. Wow.
Yeah. And while technically that might have been a tiny numerical improvement from the previous year, the classification remained very serious.
So describing the situation as very serious, that paints a pretty stark picture.
It does. And you have to see the blocking of the wire, not as some isolated anomaly, but potentially as part of this broader concerning trend reflected in that ranking.
Which leads to the inevitable question. Why The Wire? They'd been around since 2015, known for critical work. What specifically might have triggered this?
Well, you hit on it. The Wire carved out a niche, doing deep dive investigative work. Holding power accountable was, kind of their brand.
Could you give some examples? What kind of stories are we talking about?
Sure. Think about their detailed critiques of government policies, looking beyond the headlines at the real-world impact. Or their investigations into big corporate players, raising questions about, say, ethics or potential cronyism.
Right. Not always comfortable reading for those involved.
Definitely not. Their coverage of the COVID-19 pandemic often presented data and perspectives that challenged the official narrative. The farmers' protests, they provided expensive coverage, giving voice to the protesters themselves. And stories exploring alleged links between corporate interests and government actions certainly garnered attention.
So basically journalism that does its job of questioning and investigating.
Pretty much. And taking action against an outlet known for that kind of work.
Yeah.
Well, it inevitably sends a message, doesn't it?
A chilling message, you mean, to other journalists.
Exactly. It can create a chilling effect. Other media houses, maybe smaller independent journalists, might think twice before pursuing a particularly sensitive story. They might wonder, could we be next?
Leading to self-censorship, perhaps?
That's the risk.
Yeah.
It potentially narrows the scope of public debate and scrutiny, which is never healthy for a democracy.
Okay, so legally, how did the government likely justify this? There must have been some legal tool they used.
The main instrument available is Section 69A of the Information Technology Act 2000. That's the go-to provision for blocking online content.
Section 69A. And what does it allow, broadly?
It grants the central government the power to direct intermediaries, like internet service providers, to block public access to information online. The grounds are similar to those reasonable restrictions we talked about: national security, public order, sovereignty, integrity of India, preventing incitement to cognizable offenses.
Sounds very broad again. Public order seems particularly open to interpretation when it comes to news reporting.
That's precisely the criticism. The terms are quite vague, which critics argue gives the government excessive discretion. It's almost like a choose-your-own-adventure for censorship, some might say.
And isn't there supposed to be a process, like a committee review, a chance for the outlet to defend itself?
Yes, there absolutely is.
Yeah.
The IT rules lay out a procedure. There's supposed to be a designated committee that examines the request, assesses its legality, and crucially, the rules usually require that the originator of the information or the intermediary be given an opportunity to be heard.
But in the Wire's case,
Reports strongly suggest that process wasn't followed. The blocking seemed to happen without that prior notice or hearing. It felt very opaque, like decisions made behind closed doors. Think of a foggy Delhi morning, something's there, but the details are completely obscured.
and hasn't the Supreme Court weighed in on this kind of thing before? I seem to recall a case, Shreya Singhal.
You're right. The Shreya Singhal case from 2015 was huge. The court struck down a different part of the IT Act, Section 66A, for being too vague. But importantly, while upholding Section 69A, the court stressed the absolute necessity of procedural safeguards.
So they basically said, you can use this power, but carefully and transparently.
Essentially, yes. Use it wisely, follow the rules, ensure fairness. The way this block happens seems quite at odds with the spirit, if not the letter, of that judgment's emphasis on transparency and process.
It really feels like this fits into a pattern we've seen developing over recent years. More pressure on media.
Definitely. This wasn't happening in isolation. You look at the preceding years and you see a trend of increasing challenges for independent journalists in India.
Like what sort of challenges?
Well, there have been instances of financial pressure, like tax investigations targeting media organizations known for critical reporting. We've seen journalists arrested under various laws, sometimes quite stringent ones like the UAPA, or facing sedition charges that are very serious.
I remember hearing about raids on some news portals.
Exactly. While we stick to the general pattern here, those events are part of this context. Think also about Kashmir post-Article 370 abrogation extended internet shutdowns, making reporting incredibly difficult. Surveillance concerns, restrictions on publishing.
And online harassment too, right? The trolls.
Oh, absolutely. Coordinated online attacks, often viciously personal, targeting journalists, especially women journalists. This phenomenon of Yoda trolls, as some call them, it creates a hostile environment.
Plus the issue of media ownership getting more concentrated.
That's another big piece. When a few large conglomerates, potentially with close political or corporate ties, own vast swaths of the media landscape, it naturally raises concerns about the diversity of voices and viewpoints reaching the public. It all adds up to a picture of, well, media under siege in some ways.
So given all that context, what was the immediate reaction when The Wire actually got blocked? People must have noticed right away.
Oh, the reaction online was immediate and loud. Social media, particularly platforms like X, just lit up. Lots of anger, lots of condemnation, people sharing screenshots of the blocked page.
Any hashtags take off.
Yes, hashtag Save the Wire started trending pretty quickly. It became a rallying cry. People were sharing old articles, expressing solidarity. There was also, humor and satire memes criticizing the government's move. It showed a real public engagement with the issue.
And what about more formal reactions? Journalists groups, international bodies.
Journalists' unions, like the Press Club of India, issued pretty strong statements. They framed it as an attack on press freedom, likely retaliation for critical reporting.
Legal action.
Yes, that happened quickly too. Petitions were filed challenging the block, arguing it was unconstitutional, violated Article 19, and also that it flighted the procedural rules under Section 69A itself.
And international groups.
Organizations like Reporters Without Borders, which compile that press freedom index we mentioned, voiced serious concern. They urged the Indian government to reverse the block and respect its constitutional guarantees of free expression.
It really underscores why we call the press the fourth estate, doesn't it? Why it's considered so vital for a democracy.
It absolutely is. A healthy democracy thrives on informed public debate, on citizens having access to diverse information and perspectives, especially about those in power.
And without independent media willing to ask tough questions.
Then the public might only get one side of the story, often the official side. Accountability suffers. Blocking a major independent news source like The Wire is a direct hit against that principle.
There's also the slippery slope argument, isn't there? If they can block one site today.
What's next? Exactly. Who decides which voice is inconvenient tomorrow? It undermines the public's fundamental right to know what's happening, especially on crucial issues like governance, potential corruption, policy impacts.
So circling back to the government side, has there been any more specific justification offered beyond the vague national security or public order?
Officially, it remained quite vague. The specific reasons, the specific content deemed problematic, weren't really laid out publicly in a detailed way. Unofficially, you certainly saw voices supporting the government on social media platforms, pushing narratives about the Wire spreading fake news or being anti-national.
But based on what evidence?
And that's the key point. Those accusations were made, often quite forcefully, but without presenting credible, specific evidence to the public to back them up. In a system based on rule of law, assertion isn't proof.
Right. So in the face of this block, what did the Wire do? They didn't just shut down operations, did they?
No, they showed quite a bit of resilience. They immediately became very active on social media, keeping their readers updated, sharing links. They also encouraged workarounds.
Like VPNs.
Exactly.
Hmm?
They provided guidance on how readers could use virtual private networks to bypass the block within India and still access the site. It showed a determination to keep publishing and reaching their audience.
And the legal challenges are ongoing, presumably?
Yes, as we mentioned, those were filed, citing the Constitution, citing the IT Act's own procedures being violated. But, legal battles can take time. There's no guarantee of a quick resolution.
So the immediate impact of the block remained, even with workarounds and legal action.
Yes. And it leaves us with that bigger question you raised earlier. How do you prevent this kind of thing from happening again? Does Section 69A need reform? Do we need stronger protections for journalists?
It really does feel like this whole episode was more than just a news story about a website. It was significant.
Absolutely. It's a critical case study, really, for understanding the tensions between state power, digital control, and the fundamental right to free expression.
And it's not just an issue for journalists or activists, is it? This matters to everyone listening.
100%. Your ability to access information from diverse sources, to form your own opinions based on facts and different viewpoints, that's what's at the core of this. Press freedom isn't some abstract concept. It directly impacts your right to know.
So what can people do if they feel concerned about this?
Well, there are several things. Supporting independent media is crucial, whether that's through subscriptions, donations if you're able, or even just actively sharing their work so more people see it.
Stay informed too, right? Even if it takes extra effort sometimes.
Definitely. Making the effort to seek out different sources, maybe using tools like VPNs if necessary to access blocked content, and talking about it. Discussing the importance of press freedom with friends, family, online, it helps keep the issue visible.
And maybe demanding more transparency from officials.
Yes, asking elected representatives why websites are blocked, demanding that due process is followed, being an engaged citizen.
It's a reminder, I suppose, that even when governments try to control information, the truth often has a way of getting out.
It does. The desire for information for understanding is powerful, and the fight for a free and independent press, well, it's ongoing, and it's absolutely essential for a healthy democracy. It requires constant vigilance.
A crucial fight indeed, and something for all of us to keep thinking about long after this deep dive ends.